Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two wonderful guests for you today. First up, our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, is here to celebrate her latest book. It's called Up, Periscope. Later in the show, we meet Kidd Carson. He's here to celebrate Captain Kidd Carson's Bookaneerss. Are you looking for the perfect gift for a young reader? Woofy and the Dinosaur Dig Adventure, the second book in the Woofy series, is an exciting choice that fosters creativity, friendship, and teamwork. Join Woofy, a small gray stuffed dog, on his thrilling quest to help his friends excavate a T-Rex in the mountains. Young readers will enjoy his humorous adventures and admire his skills as a pup paleontologist, all set in a beautifully illustrated lyrical story. Authored by Helen Rogenson, retired award-winning teacher honored with the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. This book encourages lifelong learning while supporting charities for animal rescues and children in need. Don't miss out. Visit us at unpackyourownhappy.com and connect with us on Instagram at unpackyourownhappy. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back, written by Stephen Joseph and illustrated by Andy Case. In this third installment of the Snoodles series, the Zoodles are determined to have their revenge. With the help of a grimy millionaire who's fallen on hard times, they intend to poison the Earth's water supply and turn everyone into willy-nillys and dilly-dallies. Can Brianna and Ricky save the Earth again? Will the outcast kids on the other side of the track rise to the challenge and help save the world? You can find out with Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we have a big announcement. We have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Killer Bread by Trish Bruno and illustrated by Rachel Novel is a heartwarming and educational children's picture book that carries an important environmental message about feeding wildlife responsibly. Through a story filled with lovable characters and gentle lessons, this book makes readers think twice about feeding bread to birds and other animals at the park. The story follows Mr. and Mrs. Mallard, a friendly duck couple living in a peaceful pond with other animals. They eagerly await visits from people, enjoying the treats that they're given, especially bread. But one day, Mrs. Mallard falls ill. Mr. Mallard takes her to Dr. Hoot, a wise owl who examines and explains that her sickness is due to eating bread, which can impact a duck's crop, a pouch used to store food before it moves into their stomachs. Bread, Dr. Hoot reveals, can cause serious health issues and sometimes even leading to death. This revelation alarms Mr. Mallard, who rallies the pond's animals to educate humans on the dangers of feeding bread to birds. The animals work together to put together a large sign that explains the problem, urging the humans to bring healthier snacks like seeds, fruits, and vegetables instead of bread. In a touching part of the story, a young girl convinces a stubborn old man to stop feeding the ducks bread by persistently offering him birdseed, teaching him the importance of protecting wildlife. Our certified great read panel absolutely loves this book. We think that you and your family will too. Killer Bread by Trish Bruno. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by the books by Charmaine Perry Knight. Charmaine is a TEDx speaker, award-winning facilitator, world traveler, and author. Serving military families through quality literature is her goal and her passion. Her books are absolutely amazing. They are just full of great messages. Books like I'll Find My Way, and that's okay. I Move a Lot, and that's okay. And It's Cool to Be Kind. Such great books that you and your kids will absolutely adore. These books deserve to be in your family library. Get them today. The books by Charmaine Perry Knight. They're available today at Amazon. My friends, our dean of all things STEM and STEAM is back to celebrate a brand new book. It's called Up Periscope. Please welcome back to the show, Jennifer Swanson. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me back, Jet. I always love being on Reading with Your Kids.
You know, when I was helping you with Solve It for Kids, a great podcast, I would refer to you as our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, and also the Admiral of Adventure. And Up Periscope sounds like that's the perfect title for you to talk about Up Periscope.
Yeah, so I am so excited and honored to be able to have written this book. So it's called Up Periscope, How Engineer Ray Montague Revolutionized Shipbuilding. So this kind of takes my love of science and engineering. And also, as you know, and I'm not sure your listeners remember, but I am a 1990 graduate of the United States Naval Academy. So I was in the 11th class that had women. And Ray Montague is the hidden figure of the Navy. Oh. Which actually, if you remember that show, Hidden Figures, where they talked about how these black women actually were engineers at NASA and behind all of these amazing things that NASA did, getting some of the capsules up and around the moon and back and forth. This is what Ray Montague did, but with ships. So she was the first person to develop a computer program to design a ship. Now you're like, okay, well, great, but is that significant? Well, considering before that, by hand, it took them about 2 years to do the whole architecture, lay everything out. And basically you're figuring out how big the spaces are and where all of the electronics goes and the electricity and all of these different things. It took, by hand doing all the math, it took like 2 years. She created a program that you could do this in 19 hours.
Wow.
It was amazing. And unfortunately, Miss Montague passed away in 2018, but I was lucky enough to be able to do an interview with her before she passed away. And her story is just phenomenal. Like most of the time I'm on Zoom talking to her and my mouth is like on the floor because the challenges this woman had to overcome were just incredible.
I'm sure we've talked a lot about the difficulties that women face getting into the STEM fields. And yes. Even today, my amazing niece is studying biomedical engineering.
Wow.
And she is the only woman in 90% of her classes.
Yep. That doesn't surprise me, but yay for her. Biomedical engineering is tough. That is a tough subject.
Yeah, and she's working hard at it, and I'm very proud of her. And it's thankfully people like Ray that kind of paved the way to make it a little less tough for her and the other women that are studying in the STEM fields right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I should also mention this book is published by Little Brown, book for young readers. And the illustrations are just gorgeous. I know you guys can't see this, but it's beautiful. And they're done by Veronica Miller Jameson. So they're all in greens and blues and lavenders. Which kind of go with all of the ships that we have in there. So yes, there's Navy ships in here. There's submarines. There's aircraft carriers, battleships. So this book is kind of for everybody. And it's like only the second picture book I've ever written.
Yeah. I had a cousin who was in the Navy, and he was a crewman on the USS Lexington aircraft carrier.
Oh, okay.
And I had a chance when it was docked here in Boston for a few months. I had the chance to go on and take a tour, behind the scenes, but not an official tour. Just my cousin was taking me, and it's a city.
It is.
And when you think about, a boat, okay, you got to make sure it floats, and you got to have an engine on it and a steering wheel, but you also have to have places where crew can sleep, and maybe weapons and a bathroom and all this others. So
well, and there's a gym, and sometimes there's a movie theater, and there's all of these different. There's a medical facility in there, like a whole kind of some of them. The aircraft carriers will have. I think sometimes they'll have operating rooms that'll be used. There's a dentist office. I mean, it's everything. I spent it's been a long time, 4 to 6 weeks on the USS Independence. Back when I was at the Naval Academy, during the summer while you're going to school there, you have to do like a professional development kind of thing. And it was me, and there were 5 other women, so 6 of us midshipmen, females, went with a group of male midshipmen, and we spent about 6 weeks on the USS Independence. So this was before women could be in combat. So women could only be assigned to combat ships for less than 30 days. So maybe we were there for 4 weeks. But we actually got to go out when they were doing flight ops. Ooh. So they were out in we were in San Diego, so we were out in the Pacific, and they were doing flight ops, like, carrier landings, where the new pilots were learning how to do carrier landings. So this was only a couple of years after the first Top Gun movie. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
And so I got to be on the deck. It was funny because you're in this little square, and they're like, "Do not move. Like, this is where you stand," right? Because we're just observing, and we got to be right next to some F-14s taking off and landing, and which was amazing. But you want to talk about loud, very loud. Yeah, but it was incredible. It was an incredible opportunity. And of the 5,000 people on board that ship, we were 6 of about maybe 25 to 30 women. That's it.
Wow.
It was very interesting. Everybody was like, "Can we help you find where you're going?" We were like, "No, we're good. We got this."
So, Todd, getting back to Ray, how did she get her start in designing ships?
So she, actually, the story is called A Periscope because she was inspired as a kid by seeing, one of those mini submarines that, a German mini submarine that was caught or captured back during World War II. So her grandfather took her to this. The U.S. had captured one of the mini submarines, and they were kind of touring the U.S. at the time to figure out, or, to kind of be like, "Hey, this is what's going on. This is what our military's doing during World War II. And the story she told is she went down, climbed down inside this little tiny mini submarine and looked through the periscope and decided, this is what I want to do. I want to build one of these. I want to build it. I want to build a submarine. And so she came out, and there was a military officer, a Navy officer standing out there, and she asked him, "Sir, what do I have to do? I want to build submarines." And he kind of, back then she was like, what, 7, 8? He patted her on the head and was like, "Oh, honey, I don't know that you could ever do this." Mm-hmm. And right there, she was like, "This is what I'm going to do." And she set her life journey, and this is what I want to do. And she had lots of obstacles because she was a woman and because she was Black. So she couldn't study engineering. She couldn't get into certain colleges, but she never gave up. And she finally gets a job working for the U.S. Navy. She's more of like a typist kind of person. But over here on the side, she was in the area where the UNIVAC was, which was the old computers. And at night, she taught herself how to work on the computer. And one day, all of the men that were working on this computer were sick. And she jumped up and told her boss, "I can do this." And he was like, "Yeah, right. okay, honey, you go try. And she did the job, and she did it better than anybody else.
Awesome.
And they started letting her do this. And then eventually she got so good at it that she got transferred to the area in the Navy where they build ships. And then, none of the men were thrilled about having her there. And so they gave her this really big challenge. They were like, okay, you have to figure out how to make this program to design a ship. And they gave it to her as like, yeah, go sit over there and figure it out on your own and whatever. And she did. And it was amazing. And a lot of them were, jaws dropped. But the cool thing is so she went on to design a bunch of different ships. And the last ship that she designed was a submarine.
Awesome. What a great story.
Right? It also made a great, picture book, right? Beginning to end. We start with the submarine, we end with the submarine. I was like, you couldn't make this a better book right there.
And I love that you chose the up Periscope for the title. That's very clever.
Yeah. Well, that was my idea. We kind of went back and forth with the publisher about what do we want, and sometimes they like it to change. But to me, it was literally, that's how she described it to me. She kind of looked through the Periscope and all of a sudden she just saw this whole new world where she could be an engineer. And so I hope that that's what kids get when they read this, that, sometimes a place you visit, something you see, it can completely change your view and lead you down a path that you never thought that you could do. And maybe that's your new career. I don't know. That's what I hope kids get from this book.
Absolutely. There's so many opportunities for us to go out and do something outside of our comfort zone, or do something new, do something a little bit scary. And so many of us say, I'm going to take a pass on that. And it's a shame because, like Ray, you never know when when you encounter that thing, when you have that experience, it's like, boom, this is what I'm supposed to do. If somebody told me the day before I read that Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus was in town and they were having auditions for clowns, if somebody had told me an hour before I read that note that I would have closed the newspaper and went into Boston Garden and auditioned, there's no way I would have believed that. But I did, and it changed my life.
Yep, that was your up Periscope moment.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, it's one of those catchphrases almost that kids are really going to grab onto. Up Periscope, or engaged, Captain Picard on the.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
I hope so. I mean, I think all of us can kind of sometimes look back on our lives and be like, how did we get here? I mean, people ask me all the time, how did I become an author? And I had always wanted to write, but I never, you're like, oh, can I really be an author, right? Can I be this? And one day I was just like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. And here I am all these years later, and 50 books under my belt. And you never know. And your path, I will tell you, and you probably agree with this too, your path's not always straight. Sometimes it's hilly. Sometimes it winds. But if that's what you want to do, then you just keep working towards your goal and you'll eventually get it.
I got to ask, Jen, how do you get the belt closed when you have 50 books under your belt? I mean, that must be tough.
I put them on my back. It's in the backpack.
You're really passionate about introducing kids to STEM. Yeah. And I know you've loved the STEM fields and science. You've shared here on the podcast that you had this science club, and I think you blew up your dad's garage or something like that. But so I understand your love of STEM, but why are you so passionate about encouraging kids to check out the STEM fields?
Well, the thing is for me, STEM is curiosity, right? It's being curious about the world. And if you look around you, I love to say this when I go to school visits, is science is all around you. It's all around you. And sometimes when I'm standing in, like you, I'm in a huge gymnasium filled with hundreds of kids. And I'll say, okay, who sees the science all around them? And at first, the hands will go up and they'll be like, the computer? And I'm like, sure. But then when they start thinking, they're like, the floors, the walls, the ceilings, the air conditioning unit, clothes. Then they'll say me, my friend next to me. And I was like, that is where you get everyone aware of it, because I think, especially in today's world, kids don't get a lot of science, so they're kind of scared of it. Like, oh, science means chemistry, right? I have to do experiments and, all that and all of these things that are scary kind of, when it's really awesome. And if you see that you live in it and you are science, then it makes it more fun, and hopefully you start asking lots of questions like I did. I'm still that 7-year-old kid that started my science club in my garage asking all of these questions.
Well, we really encourage families to encourage their kids to ask questions.
Yes.
Be curious. I think there are a lot of parents, and I've shared this on the show before. I remember a parent coming up to me and telling me, we're at church and my kids are in the altar doing something. And she said, oh, your kids are so wonderful. You must be so proud. And I've got, yes, I'm very proud of them. I love my daughter, but she's getting ready to go to college and I'm really scared because that's when kids start questioning their faith. And I'm like, that's a great thing.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thing. You kids should be questioning everything.
Yes. Because
as recent history has shown, we're not always, the experts aren't always right, or they're not always telling us the truth.
And science, when you're talking about science changes, right? Based on what we learn and all of the different things that we go through. And, if you happen to be watching the space program right now, you know that not everything that the engineers work hard and, for years and years and years on works immediately the right way. But you know what? That's science and that's engineering. And that's the other thing that kids can learn about science and engineering is you don't always have to be right. You don't have to know everything. And it doesn't always have to turn out the way you want it to. In fact, sometimes it doesn't, but you can still learn from it. And those are like life lessons, right? Like you can say that about science, but you should be able to say that about life lessons.
Absolutely. Speaking of not working out the way it should be, what about those astronauts up in space? Hi, honey, I'll see you in 8 days. I'm just going to go to the space station for a short visit. And it's like now 8 months later. Would you be terrified if you were up there in those?
Well, first of all, they've been up there before. And I've spoken to a lot of astronauts. We interviewed Katie Coleman when you and I were doing Solve It for Kids. And every astronaut that I've talked to has said that their favorite place is space. So to me, I don't know them personally, but I would think they'd be like, okay, I'm up here longer. I love what I'm doing. I love where I am. I'm glad that NASA and Boeing made the safe decision not to kind of give it a try and have us land in it, although it might have been okay. And here's the other thing is, sometimes science and engineering, like things need to be changed. So this is actually a great way for NASA to kind of figure out some of their contingency plans. Like, what if something, God forbid, were to happen? How would we handle this? So I think I've watched a lot of articles, and I think also having been in the military, it's like, this is what happens to you sometimes. Sometimes you're like, my ship is in, and all of a sudden you come in the next day and you're like, no, my ship's going out for 6 months. I'll see you. So that's how it goes. Yeah. But I'm excited for them. Interesting thing, one of the astronauts that went up there, Suni Williams, I knew her at the Naval Academy. She's not going to remember me. But when you are a freshman, you go through what's called plebe summer training. So it's like basic training. She was one of my first class, one of the seniors that helped train me way back then. That was a long time ago. So she's not going to remember me because there are a lot of us. But every time I look at her, you're like, oh, I remember you, right? You remember the upper class who trained you.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm sure there's some people that you trained back in Navy who are listening to Solve It for Kids and saying, "Hi, Jennifer."
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. It's a small world sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of Solve It, we should just let everybody know how much fun they can have listening to Solve It with their kids.
Yeah, so Solve It for Kids is a podcast that I started with Jed right here. He was my co-host for, almost a year. And it basically gives everybody a peek inside scientists and engineers and their jobs that they do. And it's a really fun kind of conversation that we have, just like Jed does. We've had so many amazing guests. One of my favorite ones, honestly, is this young chemical engineer. Her job was to create toilet paper, right? Wow. And she was so excited about her job. And I'm thinking, wow, this is something we all use every day. We never think about how this is made. But we've had astronauts, we've had aquanauts. Jed, you and I interviewed Fabian Cousteau. As you would probably remember, like I said, we've had astronaut Katie Coleman, so many others. And my new co-host, Jeff Gagne, and we've been doing this for almost 3.5 years, and we're still going strong. So check us out at solveitforkids.com and also anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
You know, one of my favorite memories of co-hosting Solve It for Kids was speaking to Eric Whitaker.
Oh, yeah.
Conductor for the Los Angeles Symphony?
Well, he kind of moves around, but he's a world-famous conductor and composer. And yeah, that was amazing. I think that was like episode 5 or 6 you and I did.
And if somebody's out there going, so like, what sciencey thing can I learn from listening to a conductor? Dude, I got to tell you, I was like, he was explaining how he has to take into consideration the time it's going to take for the percussion sound to get to him, which is going to be slower than the sound of the first violinist that's sitting right next to him. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're only talking like a couple of rows. And oh no, but it's all different. And it was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. He is amazing, and he's still. You guys can go look him up, or you can also listen to our episode. That was a lot of fun. And in fact, for some of these episodes, I've created teacher guides for them, and there's one of them with that. Okay. Yeah, it was fun.
All right, so let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Solve It for Kids, and also where they can go to find out more about Up Periscope and more about Jennifer Swanson.
So the best place is to go to my website, jenniferswansonbooks.com. And I have free videos for people to download, and there's like book trailers and all of these different things. All of my books are there, and you can click through links to buy them. And you can learn all about my podcast. And of course, STEM Tuesday, which is the blog that I used to do with you. We used to talk about here before, which is a blog that's been in existence almost 7 years. Wow. And it's for teachers and librarians and homeschoolers or parents. And we do book lists, and we also have activities that you can use in your classroom. So you can check it out on my website, jenniferswansonbooks.com.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Up Periscope. Our guest has been the Admiral of Adventure, the Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Jed.
This episode is brought to you by OnceUponADance.com. Ignite imagination with award-winning dance and movement books. Once Upon a Dance inspires young readers to twirl, leap, and dream with whimsy and wonder. Whether your child enjoys unicorns, bats, zombies, or cats, Once Upon a Dance has a dance-it-out story to get them moving. For more information about this 37 delightful books, please visit OnceUponADance.com or find them on your favorite social media platform. This episode is brought to you by the Logan series. 3 wonderful books written by Christine Ritchie McNamee. Logan and the Missing Masterpiece, Logan and the Lost Luggage, Logan and the Missing Jewels. Logan and the Lost Luggage is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, and all 3 of these books feature Logan, an adorable Cocker Spaniel who travels the world with his magic bone. You and your kids are going to love traveling around the world with Logan, meeting animals from all over the world, visiting different countries and learning how to get along with people from other countries and other cultures. It's a beautiful series of books. Our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel loved Logan and the Last Luggage. We know you're going to love all 3 books. Check it out today. The Logan series by Christine Ricci McNamee. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by 28 Days of Neon by Mayra Rosenberg. 12-year-old Neon Blue Green is queen of the cafeteria, co-captain of the cheerleading squad, and has the most amazing dog any 7th grader could ask for. Her only complaint in life is that her parents named her after the color of a sports energy drink. Until the morning, she overhears them whispering and learns that she has only 28 days left to live. Neon needs a miracle, but how can she get one in only 28 days? Then it hits her. She'll do one good deed every day. This is a fascinating middle grade novel that you and your kids are going to love to read or co-read together. Get your copy today, 28 Days of Neon by Mayra Rosenberg. This episode is brought to you by Feliz Navidad. It's December of 2019, and Pittsburgh is covered in a terrible fog. Even worse, all of the reindeer get sick and they can't fly. Everyone in the North Pole is worried they'll have to cancel Christmas. But just when all hope seems lost, Santa's pet, Feliz Navidad, raises his paw to help. And while a dog is not quite a reindeer, Feliz is their last chance to save Christmas. This is a book about perseverance and grit. Feliz Navidad, the story of how Santa's dog saved Christmas. Get your copy today, Feliz Navidad, by Ari and Rhea Helper. Join us right now from the great state of Florida. Our guest is here today to celebrate literacy. Specifically celebrate his literacy program. It's called Captain Kidd Carson's Bookaneerss. Please welcome to the show, Keith Carson. Hey, Captain Kidd, how are you?
I'm great, Jen. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm super excited to have you on. I definitely want to talk about this literacy program that you have. Can you tell us all about it, please?
Sure. Everything I've done, either with being an author or the literacy program, goes back and can be credited to my daughter, who's now 25. From the time she was, little and I could read to her, she loved books. I'd read her a book. I'd finish, and the first thing she would say was, "Read it again, Daddy." And I noticed that when she was starting to be able to read on her own, that she rarely was found without, a book in her hands. And she was a straight A student, elementary school, middle school, high school, college. And I really started trying to figure out why, other than she was a good kid, but I really attributed it to all the books that she had written, which also developed into a love of writing stories, which she did. And I realized that even myself as a kid, my parents always bought us lots of books. I was one of those kids that would read under the covers with the flashlight when I was supposed to be, sleeping and things like that. But I was a pretty good student, but I never really realized why I was a good student. Thought maybe it had to do with my teachers, my family, but I put 2 and 2 together between that and my daughter. And when I realized how important a role books play, I came up with the idea to start the literacy program.
You have had quite a life. I understand that. So hearing that this dad who loved reading with his daughter, I can imagine a lot of people are thinking, "Oh, Keith was a teacher, perhaps, or a youth minister, something kid related." You were a police officer.
Correct, for 25 years, which has nothing to do with, although, I would hope the judge would throw the book at some of the people arrested. It had nothing to do with it. What it did do a lot, though, was develop a love for helping children to make sure that they go down the right path and don't end up on the wrong side of the law. So I did do the DARE program and some other things. There was a while I was in charge of the Police Explorer program, which involves youth. So I think most everything I've done in my life has always been around helping children.
Well, that's really wonderful. You mentioned the DARE program. Boy, that program has gotten such a bad rap lately. And I keep talk a little bit. Why did it get this bad rap? I have my opinions, but in your view, why did have so many people soured on the DARE program?
I wish I had an answer to that. I don't. I think part of it was their overall slogan, the "Just say no to drugs,"
Mm-hmm.
like it's that easy.
Right.
And I know back in the day it was Nancy Reagan when she was first lady was really kind of pushing that thing. And I look at it and it's the same thing I do with my literacy program. It would be great to just tell kids, read a book, read a book, read a book. It'll be great for you, read a book. But I don't like to tell children what to do in that aspect. I like them to make their decisions on their own based on what they can get out of it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's sort of a connection there. Instead of saying, just say no, maybe it's, you should say no and here's why.
Right.
And just give them the tools. And I think it's the same thing with reading. The whole reason I came up with my literacy program was to make it a fun way to get children to like and read books.
Yeah. I know over my career of 35 years of doing educational magic shows at schools, I collaborated with many DARE officers. In fact, our Super Bowl, every year I would be invited down to the Norwalk, Connecticut DARE graduation that was held in their big concert hall, and they bring in the 3,000 fifth graders. And it was just super fun with me. I never thought of, I never focused on the just say no part. I thought the program was incredibly valuable because it gave kids and police officers a chance to see each other and to form relationships. And I think that's very valuable. Being somebody who had a number of different law enforcement officers in our family, I always had a great respect and a great relationships with police officers, and I wasn't afraid of them. It was a person that I could trust and go to for help. And I think that was, to my point of view, I thought that was the most valuable aspect of the DARE program.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because most people of any age, their only interaction with a police officer is when something bad happens. They get arrested, they're the victim of a crime, they get pulled over, and you're writing them a ticket. That personal interaction is lacking. Mm-hmm. I used to spend, depending on my schedule, but if I had morning classes and afternoon classes, I would stay there during the day and have lunch in the cafeteria, sitting at different tables every day, because I think everything is all about relationships that you build.
Yeah. And along that line, I know one of the reasons the reason I started reading with your kids is because I know the relationship that I have with my now adult kids was built on a foundation of reading and in talking to the kids about the books, and reading with your kids has led to throwing the football around with your kids and cooking with your kids. And, now that my kids are grown and have significant others, vacationing with our kids. So I'm really pleased that you've created this literacy program. Tell us how it works, please.
So it's as you mentioned, Captain Kidd Carson's Bookaneerss instead of Buccaneers, but it's a pirate themed literacy program. And the reason I went that route is I've been involved in doing pirating programs and things for kids since 2003. And I found really most kids, the overwhelming majority of that, in my experience, love pirates. Even when I do hospital visits, and they do like a pirate princess party, and the kids that can come, the girls, they say, would you like to be a princess or would you like to be a pirate? And it seems the majority of the girls want to be pirates. So I looked at that and said, kids love pirates. Pirate stories usually take you on an adventure. And that's really a good thing to demonstrate to a child, that reading a book can take you on any number of adventures.
Mm-hmm.
So I laid out the foundation for starting it and came up with a logo and a website and all of that. And then began reaching out to different schools and libraries and special event coordinators and going out and doing this program. Where I will go in dressed like a pirate, and I will read them age appropriate, approved books. Now, all the books that I have in the library were donated by the authors. They were very nice to help, and they're all pirate tales. And so I read to the children. I talk to them about all the wonderful adventures they can go on and the benefits of reading. And then at the end of the program, I give them some pirate swag. So it can be a T-shirt, it can be little coins and jewels and things like that. I'll give them pirate erasers and pencils, different school supplies, and then they all get a honorary Bookaneerss certificate.
Oh.
And kids just love it because they feel like they've gone on this adventure. I do it, in a little pirate voice and try to do the best acting I can do and have fun that way. I also have a mobility scooter, not because I need one. I'm getting there, but not yet. I have a mobility scooter that has been completely remade, and we built a pirate ship around the mobility scooter. So I can actually drive it right into the school or drive it right into the library up to an event and get out. And it's just a lot of fun. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make reading fun and let the children learn on their own that, hey, I love books. This is great.
Yeah. It seems like this would be perfect for what so many people refer to as reluctant readers, kids who will tell you that I don't like to read, I hate to read. In reality, they just haven't found a book they can fall in love with yet.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of kids' books since I've started this program, and then even started looking into writing my own. And I know my goal when I wrote my book is I wanted a good story, good characters, but most important, I wanted to have a real meaning to it. And I see a lot of books that are just, how do I say it? To me, there's just not any substance to it. There's nothing to get that child excited about that story or reading. And so that was my goal in writing my book, and also the goal in selecting the stories that I read to the children, that it needs to be fun. It needs to take them somewhere. It needs to make them feel like they're part of the story or can be part of the story. So it works. It took a long time to develop, but the end result's been great.
Super. And you mentioned your own book. You wrote the book, The Pirate That Loved to Learn. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
The Pirate Who Learned to Love.
Learned to Love. Oh, my God. Yeah. That's even better.
Exactly. So, pirates have this reputation. And even when I go out and do different appearances and things like that, sometimes you get a child that go, oh, I'm scared. And then you just talk to them a little bit and you tell them a joke, or you give them a coin or, beads or whatever like that. And they realize, oh, okay, this guy's, he's okay. So given the fact that pirates have this reputation, that was what the story was about. It was about Captain Kidd Carson, of course, my alter ego, who has this reputation of being this mean, nasty pirate on the high seas, attacking ships and stealing booty. And he discovers two children stowed away on his ship when it was in port. Well, now they're out to sea, and what am I going to do with them? I don't want them. There's no place for them on a pirate ship. And his first thought was, well, I'll just put them out to sea and whatever happens, happens. But he slowly warms up and gets to know them and likes them and laughs and smiles and loves to spend time with them and takes them on a treasure hunting adventure. And in the end, his whole persona is completely different. He's gone from this mean, gruff pirate to a pirate who's learned to love. Now, it doesn't mean he's quitting pirating. Don't get me wrong, but it also shows you how children can change an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that certainly is true. I know my life, myself and my life changed drastically the moment my son came into the world. It was magical. And I felt my whole world change as I held him for the first time. And, that's a pretty amazing, special thing.
It is. It definitely is. And I wanted to be a good role model, a good example for my daughter as well. Yeah. And in growing up, and she was, I had pretty much the same feeling you did when she was born. She was my life from then on, and still is. But I really wanted to be a good role model, and she grew up, watching me do a lot of charitable work, and always wanted to come with me and help. She's gone with me to different events, hospital visits, and things like that over the years, and it's been there, right by my side. In fact, she edited my book for me, and I've just finished writing a second one, which is about to be turned over to the illustrator, and she edited that one as well. Gave me some couple of unique ideas that I hadn't thought of, and I made some changes as a result. So it's very important that I listen to her, that I respect her opinion, and that I value her as a person.
Wonderful, wonderful. Kids do love pirates. In fact, my son loved it so much, it kind of drove me crazy. What is it about pirates who we acknowledge are thieves and exploit people and hurt people and do all these terrible things? How is it that they've become these lovable characters?
That's a great question. Now some of them in real life, some legitimate pirates, had that attitude of they were the Robin Hoods of pirates. In fact, one pirate actually referred to himself as the Robin Hood of pirates. Many of them started out as part of the British Royal Navy, where they were treated poorly. They got horrible food, terrible pay, the worst punishment ever, and became pirates as a result, and realized that, their own fate was in their hands. And I guess it was that kind of attitude. I mean, they didn't go robbing, for the most part, poor people. They would rob rich ships, where they were taking gold from, say, South America and bringing it back to Spain or England. And, often it was slaves that mined for the gold and things like that. So I think it's, just that, and just that whole idea of being on a high seas adventure, and sort of a carefree, fun, jolly life. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, they were still pirates.
Yeah. We had an author on, and I can't remember her name. It's C.B. Lee. C.B. Lee. She came on and she shared with me her book. It was a middle grade novel or YA title, but it was about a pirate, a real life pirate queen called Jing Yi Sao, who tormented the China Sea with a fleet of over 70,000 raiders back in the 19th century.
Yeah, that's her real name, and in the world she was known as Qing Shi. And when you ask somebody and you say, well, who's the most famous pirate in the world or the most successful, they'll throw out, Blackbeard and some others. But the reality is she was the most successful pirate in history.
Yeah. I imagine, with this big push to be inclusive and equitable, that a lot of young girls at your presentations would love to learn about her.
They do. In fact, my girlfriend, who goes on a lot of these presentations with me and dresses up as well, that's in fact how we met. She has a niece, and they were studying pirates in school. She's just a young thing, and she came home one day to her sister, and they were watching the little kids, and she knew that she did pirating, that my girlfriend did pirating, and proceeded to tell her the whole history of pirates and mentioned Ching Shi, and she was so excited. And one of the reasons I love having her come with me is for the little girls to see that, it's not just men. There were some very famous women pirates. There were famous minorities who were pirates. So yeah, it's like you said, in this world where we want to be inclusive, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. So if a school is interested in having you come out and present your literacy program, what should they do?
Well, they can do a number of things. They can email me, captain@bookaneerss.org, or they can go to the bookaneerss.org website and just fill out the form online, send it to me. It'd be great if they had some different dates that they could submit, so that in case I'm booked on one, I could look at other alternatives. And the nice thing about it is that I will custom design it to whatever they want. Mm-hmm. If they say, look, we only have 30 minutes, we'll make it work in 30 minutes. If they say they have an hour, we'll do it in an hour. If they say they want one book read, two books read, three books, whatever it is, we'll work to make it happen. I just think it's so important for the children to be exposed to fun books with great stories and great adventures, and take advantage of the many, many benefits that books have. Yeah. There's been scientific studies that talk about all the things from brain development to building social skills to just developing a love of books in general. There's so many opportunities for children when they read books. And to me, that's the most important thing, because I think the smartest people in the world are the ones that grow up reading a lot and writing a lot.
Yeah.
Command of the English language, just so much more.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea. And if people want to learn where they can find the pirate who learned to love, where should they go?
They can email me. Well, it depends. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble and all the big websites, but they can also message me through the Bookaneerss.org website, or message me through CaptainKiddCarson.com. That's kid with two D's, CaptainKiddCarson.com. And there's a page where we'll provide you with a link. You can go right to it and buy a book, or you can message me and request a signed copy, which is basically the same price anyway.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the driving force behind the Captain Kidd Carson's Bookaneer Literacy Program. Our guest has been Captain Kidd, Keith Carson. Keith, thanks so much for being with us.
Jed, my pleasure, and I appreciate it, and I love your podcast.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Of course, a great way to make sure that you don't miss a moment of Reading with Your Kids is to subscribe to Reading with Your Kids wherever you find your favorite shows. We love the iHeartRadio app. We love Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite shows. We love that podcasting app. And if you are listening on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, please let your local station manager know you love Reading with Your Kids. We'd also love it if you could visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, read our full review of Killer Bread that we talked about earlier in the show. You can also use the contact button to send us a message. Let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of Reading with Your Kids. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest. First, our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Be sure to check out Up Periscope. Also want to thank Keith Carson. Be sure to check out Captain Kidd Carson's Bookaneerss. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all think that you deserve a big thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for letting all of your family and friends know about the show and about our mission. But most of all, thank you for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.